Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with the final chapter, or part 3, of this 1/16 scale radio-controlled M4A3 Sherman Tank model showcase video. If you're stumbling into this video for the first time, this video here is the last part of a 3-part video series that discusses this build all the way from its onset. Part 1, I go over the original condition that the model was in, as well as give the model a quick little review. Part 2, I delve into all of the details and other modifications that were made to this model, bring it up to the condition that you see it here. And in this video here, we're just going to go over the mechanical aspects of the model and take it out for a test spin. I do want to point out that this model here is built for my own personal collection and it's not for sale and or purchase. However, like I often mention in these videos, I frequently take on commission build projects from models ranging between 1/35 scale and 1/6 scale. For availability and pricing information, that information would be best by contacting me through the email address listed below, which is info@eastcoastarmory.com. Moving further takes us to this little section here. Now this, people are going to see and think, oh, that's your detail of the escape hatch, and that's a nice touch. Well, the answer is yes, it is the escape hatch, but it also serves a function. You see on this model here, in order to recharge the tank, I wasn't able to use my typical format where I hide the recharge jack under a crew hatch, either on the bow or in the turret. On this model here, the bow hatches are molded into the top deck. And for the turret, there's so much equipment on the inside for the flash and recoil system that trying to fit the recharge system in there wasn't going to be possible. And some people are going to be like, well, John, the whole upper hull can come off with that latch. Well, that's true, but I really don't like taking these models apart in order to charge them just because of the complexity of the detailing and paintwork on them. So instead, I developed this little system here. The recharge jack is on the bottom of this tank, and that's held in place with this escape hatch. The escape hatch is a new 3D printed component from EastCoastArmory.com. The escape hatch itself is made from 3D print and contains 4 little magnets. These magnets lock into these corresponding locations here on the lower hull. The magnets actually do twofold. First, they secure the hatch to the tank, but also, again, will help line it up. Now, because the model is die-cast, or I should say the lower hull is made from a die-cast metal, this is not a material that magnets can stick to. So on the inside here, I glued in place, or I should say epoxied in place, several strips of steel. The steel will attract the magnets, and then once everything is clipped in place, holds it securely. The remainder of the recharge jack is found right here. It's a bit of a octopus, but it pulls out, and here's the standard recharge jack that are found on all of my builds. In addition to the lower hull recharge jack system, another feature I built into the model was the ability to refuel the vehicle's smoke fluid system without having to take the upper and lower hulls apart for the same reasons that I mentioned before. On this model here, that's facilitated with this fuel cover cap that I have here on the hull. Like I stated before, the fuel cover cap is actually removable, and if you do so, this will give you access to top off the fuel system. Without gloves on, it should be fairly easy to do. And there we have it. You can see how long the stem is. This is ample length in order to seal off the smoke fluid tube over here to prevent any escaping puffing smoke to coming out. And also it's a good way, there's a lot of surface area here for the rubber tube to engage onto and keeps it nice and snug in place. If I move the camera, you can see what the filler spout looks like on the tank's hull. When the system is totally topped off, all I got to do is take this little guy here and just insert him back in place. Once the piece is remounted, it looks absolutely seamless compared to the remainder of the tank's detailing. With all that out of the way, let's go over now the model's electronics and mechanical systems. Like I said in the other video, all of the electronics and mechanics on this model here are left stock. I did not change them out in any way, shape, or form for any other aftermarket option that's on the market. The stock Taigen models supply you with the motion, the turret rotation, gun elevation, sound, smoke, bound machine gun firing, and this particular build here has the infrared firing system, where unlike the other builds that are showcased on this channel where they shoot a little airsoft BB, on this one here, that's replaced with a system that can flash recoil, and you can even plug in a little accessory into the commander's cupola over here so that you can have a little laser tag tank versus tank battle with another vehicle. However, since currently I don't have any other IR battle tanks in my collection, I'm not going to be able to take this vehicle out in this video and have a duel or a mock tank battle with another type of vehicle. So hopefully as I build more of these vehicles as time progresses, I'll probably inevitably end up with another one of these IR battle tanks, and when that opportunity comes along, I'll probably make a video where I can actually see how well these things engage in battle. Well, let's go ahead now and get the model turned on. To do that, first turn on the radio, of course. With the radio on, I'm now going to turn on the tank. Once the tank and the radio are both on, in order to start it up, you hit this little toggle switch here that I painted in red for reasons that should be pretty obvious. Once the sound system fires up and you have the idling engine noise, at that point there you have control of the model and you can drive it and go through all of its functions. So there's the idle noise, which means now I can drive. That's all facilitated with this stick over here. The Taigen models do have a proportional drive throttle system, so if you give it just a little bit of throttle, the tank will move at a slower rate. I will say that these systems do work, but they are not nearly as, I should say, adjustable as they are on a more hobby-grade system. If you're looking for that type of a performance, perhaps you might want to consider replacing the stock electronics with another aftermarket option. If I go ahead and move it though, you can see exactly how slow these models can move. Note, the tank is moving slow, but the sound system has not kicked in. On hobby grade versions of these electronics out there, you will have more finely tuned volume control that pairs better with the throttle given by the radio and also matches the speed of the gearbox, or I should say of the motors. In reverse though, it seems to be more responsive than in forward. And there you can see the tank moving at its slowest pace in a constant manner, and the sound system is not activating. I back it up. That's the slowest reverse. Now to go full throttle, it will look something like this. Of course, this will have that zip and go type performance to it, which is what you would expect for an RTR model. Again, if you're looking for something that moves away from this type of performance, perhaps you might want to try looking at another aftermarket source. With the tank on, the smoke system is working as advertised. Hopefully you can see it puffing away with the lighting that I have here. Obviously, because I milled away the deflector grill backing, it's going to really help with that smoke exiting from the rear of the vehicle, as opposed to having a pull up in the underside there of the lower hull. On the front, here's the M1919. Like I said in the other video, this was modified with the ABER set, and the ABER set was modified in itself, so it works with the fiber optic system that I mounted earlier. If I hit the switch, you should see the light transmit through the fiber optic. The machine gun is triggered by this little toggle that we have here, and this is customary on many of these older pattern of Taigen radios. The newer ones have a little push button here that facilitates the machine gun firing. For the turret functions, that's all facilitated with this stick over here. Left and right will rotate the turret accordingly. Also note that this tank does have the 360-degree rotation system, complete with the slip ring and the anti-stop turret rotation gear mechanism. It works really well on this build, and I haven't seen any problems with any of the wires tangling up, which can be a concern, specifically when you have a lot of equipment on the inside of one of these models. To elevate the main gun, that's done with one function, that's by going down. Just like on many of the other Taigen builds and some of the older Henlong units, the main gun is on a track, so you cannot just elevate the gun on control. You have to let it run its course. The gun will start from its position and just go down, and then once it bottoms out, it'll go up until it bottoms out. Then it'll just go through its cycle likewise. This here was changed on some of the newer versions of the Henlong, where you actually do have a up or down control for the main gun. Arguably, that is a leg up of these older Taigen units, but regardless, both of them, in my opinion, were perfectly fine. Now, if anyone's wondering, well then what does the top do? Well, that's simple. That fires the main gun and it triggers the recoil, like so. I will say that the recoil is a nice function, the snapback works pretty good, and the barrel return moves in a nice fluid motion. Overall, it's a nicely engineered piece. The setup is very reliable, and for me so far has been working without any problems. Well, let's go ahead and fire it up and take it for a spin. Common critique I get on my videos is that I tend to run my model way too fast for some people's liking. Keep in mind, these are test drives. I need to see what the model can do. And normally, if I wanted to drive at a more scale rate, I'll just drive with the tank at half throttle, like this. This is some pretty thick weeds over here, so tank's struggling a little bit. Let's see if I can get all the way through it though. I'm gonna have to go in at full throttle. Well, it looks like the Burmese jungle over here is proving a little too much for this Taigen. So close to the end, let's see if I can just muscle my way through. And we are out. Look at that. Carved a nice little channel through all that. Alright, let's go ahead and keep on going. Before I do though, I'm just going to clean up these little stragglers stuck in the suspension. This is a common thing, by the way, with RC tanks, including the big ones as well. Even on the armor tanks, you will get some grass and ivy like this spooling up like spaghetti on your running gear. And even on those tanks, it can actually cause a problem with your track tension, so you have to pay attention to that. And that's just a quick little tip for just RC tank maintenance when you're running. Well, there's nothing really much more you could want out of a test drive than that. The model performed very well on both on and off-road conditions. I was driving the tank in places where I'm not really supposed to be driving these things. The terrain in some areas of the yard is very, very rough, very rocky, and you're dealing with some heavy slopes. So it's putting a little bit of wear and tear on the drivetrain, but you can see that the tank survived it at the end of the day. This is definitely in part due to the steel gearboxes that these tanks do have. I think if I was running this tank with one of the older glass jaw zinc gearboxes, I don't think I would have been able to survive this course. But here she is. She's still standing just as good as she was before. I also want to give a shout out to the tank's tracks. The tracks performed absolutely flawlessly. There were no problems with any derailments, no other issues with the tracks disassembling or trying to fly off. These Mato tracks never disappoint. And it's also important to point out that they would not normally be fitted to a Taigen tank. Like I said in the other video, in order to mount them to this tank, some modifications were needed to have been made to the sprocket. But even with said mods, the thing performed absolutely perfectly. One more thing I want to bring up involves the track tension, because I know I'm going to be getting asked about this in the comment section. The track tension on this model is on the looser end. Unfortunately, there's no real way to adjust the tension on these models. The Taigen rear idler mounts are static and are non-adjustable as they are on the Hang Long. Currently, as far as I know, the only 1/16 scale VVSS Sherman models on the market that have an adjustable idler system are the models from Mato. Now, I'm pretty sure someone's going to ask, well, John, if you can't adjust the rear idler, why don't you try removing a link? Well, that is normally what you do. Unfortunately, I tried that, and even with just one link removed, the track was just way too tight. So it's one of those type of things where it's either way too tight or slightly too loose. So obviously on this model, I have to go with the latter. Good news is it didn't really affect the performance, as you can see. The tank was driving in some really tough terrain without any of the tracks throwing or causing any other problems. So the tracks might be a little bit on the looser end, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really make much of a difference, now does it? In fact, I did have one slight problem that emerged during this test run, and that involved this wheel that we have here. For some reason, the fastener kept on backing out during the tank's operation, and the wheel would eventually end up dangling here on the swing arm. Less than ideal. This, however, is a very quick problem to fix, and it's going to involve actually a tutorial that I did in part 1 of this video series, where I added Loctite to all of the threads. Probably what happened, the Loctite just wasn't enough in order to keep everything in place, so this time I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit more material. That should do the job and keep that little bugger where it needs to be. At the end of the day, I couldn't be any happier with this build. This model here was an absolute joy to work on, from the second I cracked open the box to the moment I put on the very last brushstroke. It was an absolute pleasure, but I do have some biases since, as many of my subscribers know, I am a hardcore ride-or-die Sherman guy, but even with that, in full disclosure, that doesn't change the fact that this model here was an absolute joy to be working on the entire time. I truly do believe that when Taigen were designing this model, they must have had their A game on, because they hit it right out of the park. This model here is awesome. It gives you really everything that you want, and then some, for an RTR 1/16 scale model. Just about all areas on this model here are very well thought out and are equally as well executed. This is true for not just the design, but with the materials that were utilized. For anybody, however, who's worked on a Taigen model or who have seen my other Taigen and Toro model review videos, this shouldn't be too surprising, because Taigen, by and large, does a fantastic job with the kits that they design. And this segues us now basically into skill level and recommendations. These models here can be enjoyed by just about everybody, from someone who's a beginner to an advanced to someone who's not even a modeler at all. If you're just a casual tank fan or a military history buff and are looking to have just a nice model Sherman that you can display on your shelf, but also have fun with it by driving it around, these models here are absolutely perfect for that. You can enjoy them. They have some great detailing on them. They're very simple to use. They have a really low learning curve. And on top of that, the stock models and their stock configuration are very rugged, where you're not really going to break anything when, just driving around and going with basic handling. These models here are perfect for that type of individual. If you're the other type of individual that likes to work on the detail of the model, someone like myself for instance, these kits here are an absolute no-brainer. And because Taigen did such a great job of getting the model's proportions where they need to be, this allows you, the builder, to just focus primarily on the surface fittings and details on the build. Because of this, the builds go by in a very quick manner and are relatively easygoing once you get all the components on hand. And of course, being a Sherman, there are a plethora, almost an infinite amount of configurations and details that you can throw on, making your vehicle completely unique and different from the other ones, even of the same type that are around. However, as laissez-faire as these Shermans are, there are some rules that go with them. And with this particular vehicle here being a late production M4A3, there are some strings attached. Unfortunately, a lot of builders out there are unaware of this, or some frankly don't care. If that's the case, you shouldn't be watching this part of the video anyway. But if you are one of those type of builders, there are some limitations on the type and scope of Shermans that you can model with this base starter kit. Namely, this vehicle was primarily utilized exclusively by the US military during World War II. If you're the type of individual who are looking to do an earlier adaptation of the Sherman, like something from the North African campaign, or if you're the type of individual that prefers to build British Commonwealth renditions of the Sherman, this kit here is not going to be for you. If you're the type of person specifically who are looking to make a Firefly, this kit is not going to be for you. Now, yes, there was the experimental M4A3 with the 17-pounder that was tested at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, but that's more of a subject for another video. But by and large, if you're a Commonwealth builder, unfortunately, this is not going to be the tank that is going to fulfill your needs very well. Aside from the individual who prefers Commonwealth vehicles, this model here should be able to work for just about any other collection. If you're the type of individual who, say, loves the M4 Sherman, loves American armor, loves World War II armor, is a fan of radio-controlled 1/16 scale tanks, this model here will just be a match made in heaven. Another individual I would recommend this model to would be anyone who's an avid fan of RC models. If you're the type of person that for whatever reason just doesn't care for the stock RTR electronics, fear not, because you can swap these out with any number of aftermarket or custom parts that you can think of. From gearboxes to smoke systems to hobby grade speed controllers to even better sound systems, all of which can be adapted to fit in this basic platform. Now, I'm pretty sure in the comment section I'm going to be asked, how does this model compare to the other VVSS Shermans that are on the market? Because Taigen is not the only one. There are two other options that I'm available that have a Sherman similar to this one here. One is from Henglong and the other is from Mato. The Henglong variant is a similar vehicle in regards to the lower hull, but that one has the 105mm howitzer for the turret, while the Mato version is this exact same pattern, but is all made out of die-cast. The Henglong Sherman is the most affordable one on the market because it is mostly comprised of plastic parts. Now, before anyone wonders, yes, they do sell a metal upgraded version. However, that one is of dubious value. If anyone has seen any of my other YouTube videos on the subject matter, you'll know that the metal used for those kits are very poor quality and have a very short running life. So you're actually paying money for parts that are just going to break down after not a whole lot of use. In my opinion, the Henglong model is a viable model because it offers a different variant compared to the Sherman that we have here, but it is almost infinitely upgradable with the exact same parts that are found on this model. Many of the components, such as the running gear, the gearboxes, and other fittings, are backwards compatible with the Henglong and can be fitted to it, improving the model, bringing it basically up to specs to this unit here. If you're looking to get more of a fixer-upper, perhaps the Henglong upgrading is something that you could look into. I would also lean more towards the Henlong option if you're going to do a really elaborate Sherman conversion. Like, for instance, I turned one into a jumbo a number of years ago, and if I was to do that build again, I would do it in almost the exact same way. With the Taigen model here, it is more expensive, and you're paying for higher quality parts like the metal turret, as well as a few other fittings that are not going to be necessary for a jumbo. So if you're doing a really crazy Sherman conversion like that, perhaps the Henlong is a better option to get into because you get into it at a lower price point and upgrade it accordingly. The Mato kits, in comparison, are all made from die-cast metal, which is good in its own right. In fact, the tracks on this model here, as well as the sprocket, are the Mato ones, and honestly are the best 1/16 scale VVSS tracks on the market. The Taigen ones are alright, but the Mato ones are definitely superior with the design as well as with the patterns that are offered compared to the Taigen versions, which really only have the one type. Unfortunately, at the time of filming of this video, I've yet to personally work on the Mato rendition of the M4A3. However, from looking at several photographs of the model on the internet, the details on the model do look to be pretty good, and the overall shape, size, dimensions of the model look to be on par with the Taigen and the Henlong models as well. I do want to add that I would love to acquire both the Henlong and the Mato version of the Sherman, do a rebuild on both of those, and then I would like to compare all three of the kits together, but again, this would be something best left for another video at another time. And with that, that wraps up this model showcase video series for this 1/16 scale radio-controlled M4A3 Sherman tank. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel where it's a great way to keep up to date on new posted content, being 135 and 1/16 scale model showcase videos like, well, this fellow over here, or the other 1/6 scale project update videos that frequently get posted to this channel. Another way to keep in the loop of new posted content is by liking us on Facebook. There I have more photographs of this particular build, as well as the other smaller and larger scale builds that frequently get posted to this channel. Finally, don't forget to swing by eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/16 and 1/6 scale builds and detail components. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Well, that was a good run. Time for me to charge the model.